time to formally introduce everybody to our webinar today, how to give the wow factor on live chat. The two speakers who previously introduced in the 10-minute build-up now introduced again. So firstly, Neil Martin from The First Word. Do you just want to give us a bit about your background with the company?
Yeah, sure. It's the First Word, and background to the company is we've been going for about 8 years now, and our mission, as I said just a few minutes ago, is to banish the blah, bull and bunkum from business writing and help people in business to write like real human beings and not corporate robots, which is why you see this fellow behind me. Don't worry, I am safe. It's not going to eat me or electrify me or anything like that. So it's just a reminder for us that that's what we're here to do. Yeah, we do a lot of work, most of our work in call centres, to help agents there to connect with their customers in human and meaningful, empathetic ways. So that's what I'll be talking about today.
Excellent. And also joining us today is a regular to our webinar series, Mike Murphy from Genesis. Do you just want to give us a little insight again about Genesis and perhaps what you're going to be speaking about today?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Great to be presenting again on this webinar. I'm Mike Murphy from Genesis. I think most people know, if you like, Genesis is a very well-known brand in the sort of contact center area. So I think that's pretty much covered, if you like, with regards to the organization, shall we say. But for myself, I kind of work on the what we call like new business onboarding side of the operation. So principally a sales role and sort of helping brands who are maybe struggling with technology to migrate from that to best-in-class contact center tech. So that's really what I'm good at, and yeah, looking forward to the webinar.
Excellent, great to hear. We've also, just for everybody who's just joining in, we will have a replay that's available later this afternoon and slides, and you can find those at www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. Also, we have a very lively chat room already taking place, which you can join by visiting www.callcenterhelper.com/chat. And if any of you have ever been to any of our webinars before, you will kind of know that we like to make them as interactive as possible. So you can please send in your tips and questions, and we can get the panel to answer those. Also, another benefit of being in the chat room is the fact that you can download the slides and download the chat log after the webinar is finished, so you can keep those best practices that you might want to remember to bring into your call center after the webinar. Another benefit of being in the chat room is that the best tip, #tip, and the best question, #question, the winner of that will be sent either a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates of your choosing, or if neither of those options are great for you, we can also do an Amazon gift voucher. So now I think it's time to firstly introduce our speaker, Neil Martin from The First Word. But before we do, I'm just going to launch a quick poll, which I'll get that set up for everyone now, which is, what is the best way to wow on live chat and email? The options are to give a personal response, give a quick response, make it easy, tell the customer about the product or service they'll love, or something else. And if you do choose something else, please add it to the chat room and we'll see what you come up with. Neil, do you have any ideas of which one of these options might be the most popular?
Well, I think as customers, we want all of these things, right? So I'm interested to know which one comes out on top. I hope the personal response will do. I think there's a lot of focus sometimes on speed, and getting through inquiries, but I'm hoping that personal is going to come out on top there, because that's where you really wow customers, not just kind of answering their question quickly. That's great, we need to do that, but it's not going to wow people.
Excellent. Let's see if you were right. And we can see that you were indeed, actually, because 54% of our listeners said to give a personal response, 16% said to give a quick response, 28% said make it easy. 2% said tell the customer about the product or service, and nobody actually suggested something else, although we do have a couple of suggestions in our chat room for how you can do that, such as Brian, who says fast resolution gives the best wow factor, and that Isabella also says wow factor can be achieved when the message is relevant plus personalized plus arrives, which I think is a great point and leads very well back to your presentation, Neil. So I'll just make you the presenter and pass the metaphorical baton over now.
Okay, great, thanks.
Excellent. There we go.
Okay, guys, can you see my slides?
I actually can't right now, no.
See.
There we
Go
go.
back to mine quickly.
That's it.
Okay. Here we go.
Perfect.
Right.
You know, does your robot have a name?
No, but we could. You know what? We could have a competition to name it today. I fear that this may give our robot too much personality.
That's true.
So yeah, it's quite a charming, you know, retro sort of robot. So any suggestions? That's brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Any suggestions for naming our robots? Yeah, let's do it today. Let's do it in the next hour. That'd be great. So great. So yeah, welcome everyone. What I'd like to talk to you today is emotional intelligence. So there's a lot of stuff, brilliant stuff happening in terms of technology in call centers at the moment. There's chat bots, there's all kinds of clever things that we can do. And we're even moving into the world of AI, artificial intelligence, as represented by our robots here. What I want to talk to you about today is emotional intelligence, because as great as robots are at the moment, and technology is, what customers, when we're talking about wowing customers, that's when we need to use our emotional intelligence. So we can use intelligence that we already have, but it's very easy sometimes in a call center environment to kind of forget that and to forget some quite simple things that we can use to make a connection with our customers. And they're often quite instinctive things. So I've got 5 tips for you to wow customers using emotional intelligence. Now, I'm going to be talking primarily about writing, but you could apply a lot of this to voice as well, because what we're talking about here is language. That's the way that we're showing that we understand our customers, that we care about them. We can only show that through the words that we use, particularly if we're writing. People can't see us, they can't hear us, you know, they can't pick up on our body language. So words have to do a lot of the work. So I've got 5 tips for you on how to do that. And then I know Mike's going to pick up and talk about how technology can support that personal experience and some really good things, good insights that technology can give us to wow our customers. So my first tip, wow tip 1, is use the most powerful word in the world. Now, who wouldn't want to use the most powerful word in the world? But before I tell you what I think that is, I'd like you guys to tell me what you think it is, please. So what's the most powerful word in any language? And write your ideas in the comments box, please. I've a bit of a clue here. It's different for everyone. So let's see, what have people said?
So because of our, I know the answer. I'm biting my lip.
You know the answer, Mike, so it might be unfair if you answer it now. Does anyone have any thoughts?
We do have a few suggestions coming in from the chat room as well for the name of the robot. There's many great suggestions for that.
Okay. Good. So we'll have to build some time for that later. Excellent. So I'll tell you what I think the most powerful word in any language is, and this is not just my opinion. So if I say, it's different for everyone. So if I say Anna, or if I say Colin, or if I say Isabella, or Jamie, or Deborah, if I just said your name, you probably instinctively just switched on. Thought, hang on, I didn't think someone was going to say my name in this, and that's because our name is the most powerful word in any language. Why? Because we instinctively switch on. We make an emotional connection. We're just built like that. So this is a really simple one, but let's use our customers' names when we're talking to them, particularly on live chat, where you can use it several times. Not overuse it, but let's use it. So I've got another question for you here. And Charlie, I don't know if you want to do this as a poll or we can just get people's thoughts, but what name do you use to address your customers? Is it sir or madam? Is it Mr., Mrs., Ms. or Miss? Or do you just use their first name all the time? So tell me, what kind of names do you use?
Yes, I will launch a poll for everyone now. With those and another couple of options there. It'll be interesting to find out if there is a set name or methods. Yeah. Now, what do you predict will come out top of this now?
I think ask them how they'd like to be called. That's generally the policy. I'd say that's a good rule of thumb. But sometimes we can't ask them. Sometimes if we on an email we have to take a punt. So I'm thinking that first name will come out, but I'm just looking at the poll in progress now, and it's pretty mixed.
Excellent. I'll share those results with you. And there we go. 22 people says % of contact centers ask them how they would like to be called, which I expected that to be higher personally. 16% do you mind if I call you? And 21% Mr. and Mrs. Doctor, 48% first name, which is interesting to see, and Sir, Madam, 12%. So with that, I'll pass back over to you.
Thanks, Charlie. So yeah, okay, that kind of tallied with what I thought really, but this has changed. I think in the last 10 years even, I think generally the default before was Mr. or Mrs., Ms. or Miss, and now we're much more comfortable with first names. But as a general rule, take your cue from the customer and copy how they sign off. So when they sign off with their first name or Mr. and Mrs., they're effectively giving you permission to do the same. So that's a good rule of thumb. But if you don't know, if they don't give you a cue, if they don't sign off, if you're just working from some case notes, for example, I would stick my neck out and say hi and use their first name, unless it's a really serious complaint, for example, or you happen to work for maybe a regulatory organization, or what you're dealing with is very serious. But general rule, say hi and use their first name. And also, you don't just have to use their name at the beginning of your chat. Use it throughout. Don't use it in every single interaction that you have. But for example, if a customer says thank you, even if you're using canned responses, just add their name in. So you're welcome, Charlie. Can I help you with anything else, Charlie? Every time we hear our name, we connect back with the person talking to us. So it's a really simple but useful way to keep that personal connection going, particularly if you're using quite standard responses. So it's a good way to personalize it. So that's my first tip. And what you want the customer to say after this is, well, they were really talking directly to me, and the name will do that. Tip number 2 is show empathy. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with empathy and how important it is, and I'm just going to give you some specific tips for how we can do that in an email and in live chat. So the first thing we need to look for when we're showing empathy is the way that customers feel. And customers, whether they're speaking to us on the phone or they're writing to us, they will show us or even tell us how they're feeling. The tendency is, though, is sometimes we just jump straight to the fix. We just jump straight to the answer and we ignore the feelings that they've told us about. And they've told us about that for good reason, because that's what's really important to them, even more important sometimes than solving their problem. It's actually, have you listened to me? So have a quick read of this email. It's gone to a premium car company, which will remain nameless, but it is a real example. Have a look. Where does the customer in this tell us how they feel? There's two clear examples of it. So in some ways, when you read this, you can get a sense of how the customer feels just from the way that they're writing, but then they do actually tell us as well. So here, so I'm not a happy camper when it comes to, so first line, they've told us they're not happy. And also I feel extremely let down and frustrated. They're telling us, so we've got to pick up on this. The problem is when this premium car company went back to the customer, this is what they sent, and it's, I think, a bit of a shocker, really, the first line here. Thank you for your email. Yeah, if you could send a screenshot over, I will take a look into this for you. So it doesn't really sound like there's much care in there. Yeah. So and then it goes straight into the fix. It just goes straight into what happened, and it gets a bit defensive. With regards to the car type, we will always try our best to allocate the chosen service. There's nothing in here about feelings. Well, there is actually, but it's really poor. I don't know if you can spot where this advisor is picking up on the way the customer feels, but it's right at the end, and it's this horrible sentence: "I'm sorry for any inconvenience caused." Some of you might be sat there going, oh, we use that all the time. Well, not going to make any apologies for this. Just stop it. Ban it now. You know, why do I say this? Well, it's any implies that there might not have been any, but we know there was inconvenience. Well, more than that was frustration, unhappiness. The other thing about this, it comes right at the end. So what that says to people is this is the least important thing. You know, I've tagged it in. It's a standard line. I've probably put it in there to get a tick in my quality assessment, but that can actually do more harm than good. So ban it. Do not use this. What could we use instead? I'll show you one example of a different opening to this one. And the empathy has to come at the beginning. It has to be the first thing you say, first thing you write, whether you're on live chat or email. You know, when we're on the phone, we do this instinctively. You know, as soon as we hear about a customer's problem and their feeling, we empathize. So, hi, Michael, I'm very sorry we didn't send you a VIP card the last 3 times you booked with us. I understand why you feel frustrated and let down by this. Now, even if you're using a standard template for the rest of this, by reflecting back the customer's language, they instinctively tune in to us and they start listening and they believe that we've listened to them. So what are the words in here that the customer used? Well, it was frustrated and let down. Also, by picking up on specific facts, so the last 3 times you booked with this, the customer knows that we've read their letter. So actually from there on, if you use the standard template, that you've kind of got the customer on board. You know, they believe that you are writing to them and that you care about them, simply by reflecting back their language. And it's really important that we do this when we're writing as much as when we're speaking. Then you can go straight into the action. We want you to be happy every time you book with us, so please let me explain why this happened and what I can do for you. So what you want the customer to say as a result is, wow, they really listened. And they'll say that when you use their language and pick up on how they feel, not just what happened. Tip number 3, another pretty kind of obvious one in a way, but something that it's easy to get wrong, is answer their questions, not yours. Now, when we're in a call center environment and we're handling the same kind of queries or issues or questions, it's very easy to just scan very, very quickly and see keywords and assume that we know what the customer is asking us. And what we end up doing is answer the question that we want to, rather than the question that the customer has actually given us. So I'll give you an example here. I was on live chat with my mobile phone provider recently, and I asked them this question: can you let me know how much I've spent in data add-ons over the last 3 months, please? So what's my question here? My question is not how much data. My question is this: how much I've spent. And this is a classic case of someone seeing, I think, the word data and not really reading my question, because this is what I got back. Roshni says, sure, and I say, okay, thanks. And then Roshni says data and gives me the data over the last 3 months. So, and then gives me it again, inexplicably. But that's not what I asked, so I had to ask it again. So I say, thanks, and how much have I spent on add-ons, please? And Roshni says, I can see that you have 2 gigabytes of data in your last bill. So still not answering my question. At this point, I'm thinking, am I speaking to a robot? And it's not until the third time of asking that when I say thanks, can you see how much I spent? Roshni says it's for $9.99. Now, so it's taken me three questions there. So that's a lot of time for me as a customer. I'm getting more and more annoyed. And also, Roshni is having to spend lots of time answering this as well and kind of losing that connection that she built up earlier in the conversation. So the key here is to not just look for keywords, is to actually read the question. And you can do that. I know we don't have much time on live chat, is by reading the question twice and sometimes just reading it out to yourself, reading it out loud, because then you hear what the customer's actually saying rather than what you're reading. So this would have been much simpler. You know, it could have just taken a few seconds.
Yeah.
If we do this, we answer our customers' questions rather than the ones that we think they're asking. What we want them to say is, wow, that was easy. And again, they're just really listening to me. Tip 4 is do it yourself. So we do all kinds of helpful things for our customers, but sometimes it can sound like they're happening by magic, or maybe our robot is doing them again. You know, that something other than the person you're talking to is actually helping you. And the only way we can convince our customers that we're working on their behalf, we personally are doing something, is through language, and it's by using what's called active language. And if you've seen any of my webinars before, I often give this tip, and I'm going to explain it to you through a film. And we've got Liam here, Liam Neeson. You've probably seen this film. It's quite a famous film. It's Taken. So I want you to think now and say it out loud to yourself. Type it in the chat box if you like. What is he saying in this point in the film? It's a really famous one. Just want you to think about it, say it out loud to yourself, type it in the chat box. What is he saying? Okay, what he's not saying is this. The perpetrators will be looked for, the perpetrators will be found, and the perpetrators will be expired. Why doesn't he say this? Well, there's no sense of any real action on Liam's part. Liam is the ultimate action hero in this film, and he wants to strike fear into the people who've kidnapped his daughter, if you've seen the film. He's not going to do it using this language, because this language is passive. There's no sense that he is actually going to do anything here. What he does say, which I'm sure a lot of you were able to think of, is this: I will look for you, I will find you, and I will kill you. So, hard-hitting stuff. I'm not suggesting that you ever type this to your customers. I'm using it to make a point about active language. So active language is where we know who is doing an action. And in this case, it's I. So get into the habit of saying, if you're doing something, say I, because it instills trust. I now believe Liam is going to go and do this. I didn't believe him before. So we've got to use active language. There's a good way of testing for this and seeing for it. So after today's session, go and have a look at your work if you write directly to customers, or look at your teams and do the by robots test. Because if we use the passive, it makes it sound like a robot has done it, or it's happened by magic. So the test is, if you can put the words by robots at the end of a sentence, it's passive. And if you can't, it's active. So I'm gonna just show you a quick example of that, and do the by robots test. Tell me if it's active or passive. Write it in the comments, please. So if you can put by robots at the end of the sentence, it's passive. If you can't, it's active. Your complaint will be looked into. Is this active or passive? Well, you probably got this one. Your complaint will be looked into by robots. It's passive, so there's no sense, if I'm the customer, that this is going to happen, that the person I'm talking to is actually going to do it, because there's no sense of ownership. There's no I, there's no we in there. So what's the active version? I will look into your complaint. That simple shift reassures you that you're still talking to a real person, and that real person is going to go and do what you want them to do. What you want the customers to say here is, wow, a real person is going to sort this out for me. It instills trust using the active. We believe that this is going to happen. Okay, and my last tip then, tip number 5, is really more of a mindset more than a writing technique like the last one. It's more about getting into the right frame of mind when we're emailing a customer, when we're on live chat, or indeed when we're speaking to them on the phone. So if they were a friend, what would you recommend? Because sometimes it's easy when we're thinking about customers just to think about maybe just doing the basics really for them and just kind of answering the question that they've given us, rather than thinking actually there's something else that that they don't know about, they haven't asked me about, but actually if this was my friend, I would give them some more advice. And I'll show you an example. This is from a rail company. Again, I haven't named them, but it's a real example. So this customer went from Swindon to Bath last Saturday to watch the rugby. It was packed the moment I got on. I had to stand all the way. I then had the same on the way back. Not great. It put a real downer on the day. You know that rugby match days are going to be busy, so why don't you put on more trains and carriages? I really don't fancy the prospect of standing again. So there's customers telling us what happened and how they feel. And here's one response that just ticks the box, it answers the question, but it doesn't go any further. So, hi Steve, I'm sorry to hear you had to stand on the way to and from Bath. I can see how this put a downer on your day. So again, like the last tip, using their language, put a downer on it. The good empathy there. We do put on extra trains during match days. At certain times, particularly and it gives to you services, the trains get very busy as these are such popular times to travel. So in this case, Sarah's answered the question, but if this is a friend, Sarah knows in her role that there's something else she can do. She can help this customer and go a bit beyond just answering the question and offering some empathy. So what can Sarah do? Well, this. So if you just skip down to the third paragraph in this one, so the first and second paragraphs are the same as the last slide. We go a little bit further here. So the best way to make sure you get a seat is to book in advance at trains.com. Don't try that website, it's made up, obviously. You'll also get the cheapest fare that way. Or if you prefer, give us a call on 01234 and one of our team will be happy to book them for you. So Steve hasn't asked for that and he might not even think to do it, but we've offered him a way to, okay, maybe we can't make the trains less busy, but we can try and get him a seat for the next one. And you can take the same mindset into a live chat or a call. So actually on a live chat, you can go a step further. You can actually do that for the customers. You can be proactive. So here Sarah says, shall I book your tickets for next week's game now? So not just answering Stephen in a kind of reactive way, but thinking forward for the customer and going, right, I can do this for you now. So you've actually, in that case, you've helped Steve out, you've given him some helpful advice, and you've turned what was a complaint into an opportunity to sell your customer another ticket. What you want them to say is, wow, that was really helpful. Or maybe I hadn't thought of that, thank you. The best way to do that is to think of that customer as a friend. What advice would you give them? Sometimes it'll be obvious from what they tell you, like that example from Steve there. So, but there's lots of other ways that you can find out what might be helpful to a customer. And I know that Mike's going to talk about customer profiles later on, and lots of data, so that if you have the right platform, you can see, what's going to be helpful for a customer. So, what journeys have they taken? What have they bought before? What are they interested in? What questions? You can go back to other transcripts, and understand what might be helpful for them. So it's not just answering the question they put in front of you, but how else can you help them? And we instinctively do that if we think of them as friends. Guys, so thanks for listening. Just a quick summary of the tips then. So number 1, use the most powerful word in the world, people's names. And drop it into your live chats a few times. Don't overdo it, but just keep that connection going. Tip number 2, show empathy by reflecting back their language. Choose that wisely, but you only need 1 or 2 words for people to tune in and really feel listened to. That's a classic. technique for showing empathy. It's really powerful. Number 3, answer their questions, not yours. So read their question, read it twice to make sure that you're actually answering what they've asked you. Do it yourself by using the active. So do the by robots tests. Are you saying I if you're doing something? Is it we if it's just team? Make sure you're saying who's doing what. And finally, get into this mindset. So if they were a friend, what would you recommend? Just go a bit further than just answering their question. So thanks everyone. Just got my contact details on the slide here. So it's neil.martin@thefirstword.co.uk. That's our website as well, thefirstword.co.uk. So you can find out more about us there. Drop me a line if you'd like any more tips on what we've talked about today. Plus a longer version of that reply to Michael, who was writing to the premium car company. So thanks very much, everyone. Charlie, shall I hand back over to you?
You're on mute.
Yep.
Apologies for that, everyone. Thanks, Neil. That was a lot of great content there. I even wrote down a few other learnings I took from that. That was to use reflect about the customer's language, which I thought was great. To use personal pronouns and active language to instill trust, and obviously what you would say to a friend. I think it's just great practice for anyone.
Great.
So now moving on to our chat room today, we're going to be moving on to your top tips and questions. But first of all, we have names for Neil's robot, which I think
Excellent. Love
I think Wordy the robot is top of our list there. Neilbot. Any winners on there for you, Neil?
Cool, there's some crackers actually. Yeah, I like Wordy the robot. I'm not sure about Neilbot. I don't know if that's, do I take that as feedback, my presentation style? Yeah, maybe I'll veto Neilbot, but thanks. But yeah, Wordy the robot's like jumping out at me at the moment. I like Wowbot as well. Maybe we need an alter ego for this robot as well. We need like a, a Wowbot.
I quite like Liam Neeson as an example after your example.
Might need a bit of context, but I like just calling a robot Liam is that's brilliant. So yeah, thanks everyone. Good. Our robot has been named. Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. And we've got an opinion in now from Colleen, who says most of our emotional and heartfelt compliments are from our clients via email are due to quick response times.
Yep.
That's great. Christine says usually our customers get offended by using their first name in our profession. It'd be interesting to see what profession you're in actually, Christine.
Yeah, it would.
That one especially. Tip now in from Liam, hope not Liam Neeson, who says the first part of any response, wishful thinking, the first part of any response should focus on the customer's feelings and using empathy, then proceed into trying to resolve this. I guess this is a bit what you've covered there, Neil. Would you agree?
Definitely, yeah. I like what Liam has said about the first part. It has to be the first thing you write really or say, because the first thing we write is the most important thing for it's the first thing that they'll see. And if we empathize in any situation, very early on, that helps us to calm down if we're feeling angry, and then we can actually read more clearly what the response is. So yeah, really good tip. Thanks, Liam.
Excellent. We've got another tip now sent in from Aidan, who says, is it okay to say sorry? Gone are the days when saying sorry means guilt and sorry. Make it personal and meaningful. I guess, what would you say to that, Neil?
I absolutely agree. There's a paranoia, I think, that sorry leaves you liable in emails and live chat. I think the simple thing is, if your company has done something wrong, say sorry. It's the only word to use. On the flip side of that, if you haven't done anything wrong, don't just use sorry as a kind of panacea. Don't just chuck it into everything, because not so much because it leaves you liable, more that it just customers know that you haven't done anything wrong and that you're just trying to pacify them. So, but yeah, if you've done something wrong, say sorry. And yeah, Aidan is totally right here. Doesn't mean immediate guilt and you know, you're more likely to cause more trouble for yourself if you don't say sorry, and you know, when your company does something wrong.
Absolutely, and I think make it personable and meaningful is another interesting point in that. Mike, do you have any other ideas that maybe we haven't shared already about how you can make a live chat and email personable?
No, I just like that guidance from Neil about keeping it in context. You know, don't over comment when there's no need for it, but when there is a need for it, be absolutely frank with the customer. And sorry is an important part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I've got another tip now from Isabella, who says, map your customer journey, including live chat, voice and email, and for every touch point, define what customer emotion could be for a customer. I think this is great kind of advice to kind of maybe perhaps you can measure sentiment at each touch point of the customer journey. I don't know if you would have any advice for doing that, Mike, at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting kind of area, like the notion of sentiment captures, if you will. But I think as an objective, as a you know, like our goal, if you will, should certainly be sort of understood by everybody across the organisation. And then through management, if you like, of individuals' performance, like interaction type by interaction type, you know, how close are we getting to that goal that we've defined? So I think it's a healthy thing to do, if you like, and communicate throughout the organisation so that people understand the expectation across all the different channels. So that's powerful.
Absolutely. Another tip in now from Hannah, who says, don't be afraid to use emojis if the customer has used them first. Do you go along with this advice when using emojis, Neil?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, Hannah, like 5's a good number for tips, but if I had 6, that would be number 6. Yeah, it's a bit like you know, reflecting back people's language. You know, it's a way to make an emotional connection with them is to use an emoji. Don't go emoji crazy. You know, again, it's picking up on their cues and using them at the right time and in the way that your customer does. And I actually think, you know, that doing nothing isn't you can't, if your customer's using emojis and you don't, it's not neutral. They might actually think you're being a bit cold. So yeah, good tip. Thanks, Hannah.
Absolutely. And now another tip in from Tom, who says, say I'm sorry instead of the word apologies, as it's much more professional. I think that's absolutely right there. I think it's a great point actually to move on now to Mike's presentation. But before we do that, I just quickly want to launch another poll, and that is, do you multi-skill advisors in your contact center? The options are no, but we're planning it. Some people are multi-skilled, most people are multi-skilled, everyone's multi-skilled. What answers do you expect to come up here, Mike?
Yeah, and I suppose just to help, if you like, by skill we kind of mean handling chats or emails or social, or I suppose in that sense, just so we understand, if you like, the definition of the skill. And yeah, I'm kind of curious really that I kind of asked for this question because you know, we have a lot of capability technology-wise, but it's just the adoption, if you like, of that capability isn't always as frequent as we might think. So I'm just curious how people have adopted or not, if you like, the ability to do multi-skill working.
Absolutely. Let's just share the results then with everyone. And we can see that 5% of contact centers say no, 7% say no, but we are planning it. 26% say some people are multi-skilled, 36% say most people are multi-skilled, and 26% say everyone is multi-skilled. So it's quite interesting to see such a diversity in the results there from one contact center to another. And I think it's a great time now to pass the baton fully over to you, Mike. I'll make you the presenter.
Okay, just going full screen, and can you confirm that you can see my screen okay?
Yes, perfect, thanks.
Excellent. Okay, so the content I have here is kind kind of an overview of some of the technology tools that we have to help you deliver that wow factor on email and live chat. And like I said in the introduction, Genesys is a well-known brand in this sort of contact center area. We've been working in this area for, gosh, like 30 years, long before the notion of email handling in the contact center and chat handling in the contact center. So to that end, we've kind of watched these new technologies come on board. And with them, I think there's also a notion, if you will, of some of the learning that we had from the early call centers, being able to sort of articulate that learning into these digital technologies. So my short agenda really is about this kind of consistency is a key message I want to deliver across the variety of slides, and in how we handle email and chat, I'd like, if you will, the handling of those digital interactions to be consistent. And part of that really is then the idea of, you know, being able to coach my colleagues in becoming better at how they do that. So with the help of things like recording and quality, I'm able to point out, if you like, areas for improvement and help the agent, you know, onboard that skill, get confident in that skill, and be comfortable using it going forward. And then something which I've observed, if you will, as we've kind of been, you know, enhancing our technology to make life better for all our users, this idea of remembering everything becomes very, very powerful. And in the sort of chase for empathy that Neil was articulating earlier, how important it is to empathize, because I'm able to sort of understand for each visiting customer, you know, what their history has been with us, contact-wise, that helps me to be, if you like, empowered and empathetic about how I want to position my response. So they're the three sort of key things I would like to present this afternoon, and I look forward to your feedback when we get there. So the idea of like a consistent user interface, this is just a simple, you know, visual, if you like, of our technology called Pure Cloud. It's our kind of like our lead, most modern contact center application. And what's consistent here really is that it's one interface for all of the technologies you can see listed there. So from that perspective, you know, this webinar is about chat and email, and you can see in the queue boxes I have a chat ongoing with Tom Wiggins, and I also have a chat ongoing with Tim Peake, and they're kind of sitting there on my desk for me to handle or for me to interact with. But you can also see, why did that pop up? I thought I'd closed that application. Sorry. What you can also see is at the bottom, you can see an email, which is currently the one I'm working on. And that's the sort of the black one, if you will, at the bottom of the column. And the reason I'm sort of showing that email is because in the routing that's been configured for me on this application, I've chosen, or it's been chosen for me to be able to handle emails and chats. And however, this important customer, Felicity Jones, was prioritized above the chats to be dealt with first. So in that sense, that kind of shows the sort of options that are available here. And now that I have Felicity's email, I'm able to sort of jump onto that and deal with that as a priority. But nicely and helpfully, I'm also able to see in history what emails we've had from Felicity before. So again, I can very quickly understand, has this been a frequent conversation I've had with her? Or is this a new conversation? Like, how long has it been since we last emailed each other? Is it an ongoing subject that we're just, like furthering on an issue? Or is this something new? So again, helpful tools to make it easy for me to respond back. And then, you know, as an individual, if you like, learning this tool, I can, you know, be onboarded, if you will, into the operation very quickly. Because also that tool also supports social and voice and callback, and we saw from the poll, if you like, that about a third of customers are using, you know, multi-skilling across their operations. Then again, through this same interface, I'm able to handle all of those different interaction types in a nice, consistent way. So really, really easy to learn. You know, once I get my head around one interaction type, the rest I kind of follow very quickly, and then easy, if you like, for the operation to train, so I can be effective very, very quickly as well. And then some of the things we have, because it's all, if you like, in a single technology, is that it's easy to promote from a digital interaction, like we're talking today about chats and emails, perhaps into a voice interaction, in the event that it becomes like a critical nature, or maybe an urgent nature, or maybe time limited. Maybe the promotion might be to an SMS if the customer is on the move. So those tools are always available to me and can be helpful. And I should expect, if you will, from a provider, we also have things like wrap-up codes. So every interaction, doesn't matter what it was, has to have a wrap-up code. So I'm able to measure and manage my operation, if you like, concisely. I have the ability to put notes against each interaction if I want to, and that helps with the remembering thing I mentioned earlier. We do have scripts, and scripts are interesting because they can be good to help new sort of starters kind of just make sure they're keeping in context with the conversation with the customer, also through chat, also through email. So to that end, scripts aren't just for voice calls, so just be mindful of that. But one of the things which is quite useful really is the idea of the canned responses. And as we were sort of rehearsing this, there's an important sort of point that we made together, if you will, in preparation, and that is, have you visited your canned responses recently? It might be a good idea to do that and just kind of take a critical eye on those, and maybe do the by robot test on some of your responses, just to make sure that you are actually getting the right sort of intonation behind your responses in those useful and easy to use, if you like, canned responses, but then make sure that they are sharp and make sure that they are picking up the learning that Neil has passed on to us this morning. So the next thing I wanted to touch on then really is the notion of retaining that learning. So now that I have my sort of skilled user and they're up and running and they're handling the chats and emails confidently, what we'd like to do is to make sure that they maintain a sort of a level of performance. And we've learned over the years that recording every interaction, and in this case you can see from the graphic a recording of a chat interaction with my colleague Michael Logan. So he's in this case the agent, and he's talking to an external participant. It's a short chat, so you can kind of see the transcript in the middle, the chat log itself. So there's not a lot of content there, but it kind of shows you how the sort of technology works in providing this information, if you like, clearly and accessibly. I'm able to kind of pass that recording to a supervisor to review that sort of conversation on chat, go through all the steps of the interaction between the customer side, the agent side, follow through an evaluation, and you can see an example of the evaluation in the lower half. Did the agent welcome the caller correctly, or the caller correctly? How did the agent sound? How did the agent respond, rather, in the actual response? So you craft these evaluations based upon how you need to. These are all configurable per user, but what it allows you to do is to be quite sharp in identifying some of the gaps that we've learned this morning. So have we shown empathy? Have we responded to the customer correctly? Are we using that by robot test? Those are ways that we can help sort of like quality score Michael's performance in answering that chat. And helpful then beyond that then is that sort of score becomes part of his evaluation. You can see in this particular interaction he scored 100 because it was quite a brief chat, and I think it's just a demo example. But I can sit with Michael and review, every week, every 2 weeks, longer perhaps if necessary, how he's doing in adopting the new skills that we've learned today, and making sure that he keeps them and they don't become rusty and if you like, lazy. They're kind of sharp and continuous. That's the main thing we want to achieve. So that idea of the new behavior change, that's the most important part. And obviously as well with recording, there has to be compliance. So just be mindful of compliance, I think, is the point I'm making here. It's part of our everyday lives today, whether it's GDPR, whether it's DSS, PCI, etc. Just be mindful of that in your operations and think about customer data and how you're managing customer data and how you're accessing and recording customer data, because the rules have changed, they become more strict, and need to make sure that your vendor, if you will, who's helping you with these technologies is providing you with compliant technology. So just a little bit of caution there to keep in mind, really. The next point then was the idea of remembering everything. And we kind of touched on this a couple of times in the conversation, but here we have a customer of ours called John Elliott. And in our platform, because we're handling all of these different interaction types, what I do is actually remember those and store them and create this notion of an external contact or a customer profile. And you can see here on the left, if you like, Elliot John, he's an illumination officer at Infinium Insurance. We have his call number details, his email details. But I can also add to that profile as time goes by. And what you can see in the list in the middle really are the last interactions that we've had with John Elliott, who the user was that had that interaction. So you can see it's Michael Logan again. So he's one of our lead demonstration guys, and that's why he's kind of handling all the interactions. So to give me an example of a good sort of external contact profile, that's the way I got that. But it could be whoever agent handled that particular interaction would be named there. But you can see all the interactions that took place chronologically over time, and I can see the last one was a message, the one at the top. After that came an email, then we had a call, then we had a couple of chats, we had another call, and so on. You can kind of see that it's like a breadcrumb trail of your brand's touch with John Elliott over history. And again, helping me to be empathetic about, John Elliott at right this moment, he's messaging me. He might be waiting for a flight and there's something gone wrong, or he might be traveling to a destination and something's gone wrong with a reservation. So, often these things can become quite critical and emotional and very, very important for the customer. So knowing, if you like, that the contact history is a bit visible to me puts me helpfully in a frame of mind as I try to respond to the customer's query correctly. And it keeps me, if you like, in step, as I call it. Breadcrumb trail or in step is kind of one and the same thing for me. Okay, so just the last thing I wanted to touch on was, well, how do we do this? And what we have here really is a platform that we've been working on for the last, I think, 7 years. It's been on the market for 5 years. It's called Pure Cloud, and it's kind of built on the experiences that we've had over like 30 years really of working in contact centers. So, I mean, there's lots and lots of capability here which aren't relevant to our webinar today, but you can see web chat and email are part of the customer channels that the platform can support. But also in the same way, if you look at the top, call recording, screen recording are part of what we've shown you in the example. They'll be part of the tools that would help us to, if you like, retain the kind of knowledge that Neil shared earlier and make sure that we are keeping that knowledge and using it over time. That's using the quality management element. If you look down further at the interactions, the bottom section, the journey mapping really is the part where we talk about the remembering everything. So just knowing that those interactions are going through a single platform means I can capture them. I can associate them with Mike Murphy because that's who I know is the customer. And I can remember those and then helpfully present them to the agent at the time of the next interaction. So everything you can kind of see here is like on the platform, but in this case, we're selecting the parts that are relevant to this particular webinar. So a couple of points just to make really are that, when you get lots and lots of different technologies in your contact center, it becomes very hard to manage. You start to lose that consistency. And what we find, if you will, when customers adopt something like Pure Cloud, they're really pleased with the fact that all their reporting is the same for chats, emails, socials, messaging, etc. All of their scoring is the same. So for the agent, it's actually quite consistent for them to learn how to improve and where to listen, if you like, to coaching tips. It helps the kind of operation to be more, I suppose, like managed better, organized better, and there's less opportunity for ambiguity and, blame perhaps, which often happens when, well, I can't get the right report from this platform, but I can get another report from that platform. Those kind of issues go away, which makes life much more useful and much more structured and organized for the operation. So with that, Charlie, I'm going to end now. Thank you for that opportunity, and I look forward to tips coming back from the audience in the chat room.
Excellent, thanks, Mike. There was lots of great stuff in there. I think one point that particularly stuck out for me was because I recently visited a call center in Birmingham, and they had the same kind of quality function where they could share scorecards with advisors, and they really found being able to do that could align their vision of quality with the advisors, and they found that CSAT was improving afterwards. So I thought that was great, and it was other great points like that. So thanks for that, Mike. So going back to the chat room now, we have our top tips and questions from the audience, and our first one in is from Lorraine, who says, let the customer know what's happening every step of the way if the comms are taking longer than normal. I guess you would go along with this, Mike, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yeah, correct. Especially if it's a complicated procedure, or if I have to like rely on third parties. It's really important that the customer understands what's happening and what they expect next, and what is your commitment to helping them with that sort of resolution, however long it may take. So being present and available and owning it, I suppose, really, I think is really important.
Excellent. I've got another tip in now from Isabella, who says, split your customer base into personas so that you can group your communication for different customer types based on demographics and interests. Assign the most appropriate communication channel for each group. Neil, I don't know if you've come into contact with personas before, but I particularly like this point. Any thoughts on it?
Yes, I think personas is good because it's, you're working to understand your customers. There is a danger with personas, I think, that they can fall into stereotypes, and that you can start answering and addressing personas rather than real people. I think it's a helpful thing to do, as long as you have that kind of lens on it, or that kind of caveat which says, actually, let's be surprised. We're open to people surprising us. So, for example, I think a lot of people in our line of work think that anyone over 50 wants a really, really formal style of writing back to them, and when we actually have done our own research into what customers like, that's not always the case. So it might be generally true, and this is the same for personas, but there'll always be outliers and people who don't fit the type.
Absolutely. Another tip in from Liam again, who says the formatting and structure of email contacts to customers should have a lot of attention paid to it, as this is vital in the delivery of information, and wonky formatting or a clustered reply or mismatched fonts really stand out negatively to customers. I guess, Mike, this kind of links to the points about canned email responses that you made earlier.
Yeah, partly canned responses. Also, I think as well, it's kind of like showing that it's being a bit lazy. I mean, like as a brand, I would expect my advisors, if you like, to be consistent with my customer, and these kind of examples of wonky formatting and cluttered replies are just examples of, just to me, if you like, just not paying attention, and will have a tarnish on the brand. So sometimes this can happen with like lots of replies going each way, and kind of getting technology mix matches. So I can get some of that, but you've got to be kind of careful just to kind of try and keep a consistent professional approach in there. I would absolutely agree with the tip.
Excellent. Thanks for that. We've got another tip in now from Colleen, who says, saying you're sorry is not enough. Show that you are sorry by finding out what went wrong, fixing it, and then informing the client that you've firstly solved their issue and made a point of fixing it so that it doesn't happen again. That's a believable sorry. Would you go along with this, Neil?
Yeah, absolutely agree with this one. I've focused on empathy and sorry today, because sometimes that's the thing it is missing. People jump straight to the fix and don't address how people feel. But yeah, if you don't actually act on what you say, it's like in life, isn't it? If we can say sorry but don't change, or don't do anything different, or don't act on it, then it's a hollow sorry. So yeah, totally agree with that.
Excellent. I've got a question in now from Michael, who says, does anyone working in a heavily regulated industry such as insurance, how do you balance conversational with compliance elements? Well, I mean, it's difficult to say to answer this, I guess, but Mike, any thoughts?
Well, I think the first thing is your compliance elements would be helpfully taken care of in the canned responses. So that's also quite helpful. I like the idea that Neil mentioned about maybe putting a little bit of empathy in first, if you will, and that sort of free flow, kind of like around the canned response, I think would be helpful, and maybe dropping the name in here or there just to make it more conversation, I suppose, really. Yeah. So I think there are ways to achieve it. And yeah, I mean, like these technologies have been deployed across every industry, really. So from that perspective, the examples will be there.
Excellent. Perfect. Thanks for that, everyone. We've now come to the end of today's webinar, but firstly, just a few things before we leave. In 1 or 2 words, could you answer what did you like best about the webinar in our chat room? That would be excellent. But before we go, we have time for a winning tip, which today comes from Antonica, who says, who's come up with an acronym for us, which is HEAT. Which the H stands for hear, listen to what the customer is saying, E to empathize with the client's complaint, A to apologize for the incident, and T for take ownership and find a solution to the concern or complaint, which I think that's great, and it's always nice to spread those kind of acronyms and mottos around the call centers to help spread best practice. Just another thing before we go now is if you could complete a survey when you leave the webinar, please fill in our post survey, which is just 4 questions long. It'd be great to help us keep improving these webinars in the future. Another thing is if you would like a product demonstration of the technologies that Mike spoke about today, please fill in the box in the post webinar survey also. And again, if you want to revisit any of the information that we've discussed today, you can watch the replay and slides by visiting www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars, which will be available from later on this afternoon. And just a reminder that to visit us to see any more of our webinars before Christmas, there's still time to register. But for now, I just want to say one final thanks to Neil for joining us today. Thanks, Neil.
Great, thanks very much. Sorry, you cut out. But thanks, everyone. Thanks for your comments and questions. Excellent. Thank you, Charlie.
Perfect. And thanks as well, Mike.
You're welcome, Charlie. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. And we'll see all of you again at 2 o'clock next Thursday. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.